I'm Pat Tormey, and today we're going to be looking at how do I smart clients templates. We're going to be looking at two types of templates. One is the individual item template, where you can collect forms and classes and modules, whatever you need. And the other one is how to do forms, how to do the entire project. Okay, let's take a look at a simple form I've got in front of me here. I'm going to change the background color, just so you can recognize it when you see it. And that background color will make it something very attractive like blue. And we can put a couple buttons on there. Okay, so that's a handy little form. We've all got one or two just like it somewhere. I'll go to my Solution Explorer here and fire it up. And when I click the button, it says close. All right, that's not too dramatic, but it's a great example of exactly what we're trying to do here. I want to be able to reuse this in other places. So I'm going to tell it I want it to open in center screen. Just to make it a little bit easier to see when it comes up. Alright, so this is my blue form, and if I want to use a blue form again and again, I want it to have this particular size and this button on it. All I have to do is take the project and say what I want to do here is export a template. It says you want a project template, in which case everything is going to go, or an item template. We're going to go with the easy one first and start with the item template. It's form 1 here, so I'll just click form 1 and say next. I don't need these, but what happens at the form level, these are all defaults, that's why I don't need them. What happens at the form level is you may be using references to other items, and it does not, at the item level, check and see if these things are required for your form. So keep in mind that it's up to you to specify. When you go to the project can figure out for itself whether or not it needs the additional references. Okay, I'm going to call this blue form. And since that's a very descriptive name, I'm just going to drop into the template description. Now, if you notice, what's going to happen here is under My Documents, there's a folder called My Exported Templates, and it's going to end up with a zip file in there. And the zip file is a collection of everything I need to recreate this blue form. So it'll be the resources and icons if you use them, and just everything else you need, including the code behind. I'm going to allow it to automatically import the template into Visual Studio, and I'm going to have it go ahead and pop up the Windows Explorer. All it's going to do is open this folder for me. Okay, there's the blue form. Now you can see that the blue form was exported under My Document Templates. I'll drill into this a little bit so we can see what's there. You have the form, its resources, the designer code, the icon if you had selected one, the default icon otherwise. And in here is an XML file that later, if you need to, you can edit this XML file when you get more sophisticated and how you use your templates. So far, I haven't had any reason to use it more sophisticated myself. It seems to work just great out of the box. Pop that open, and you can see what's going on here. Is you got the default name, you got some data that describes what's there, and then the content itself. And as you can see in this simple case, it's just the form, the designer, and the resources. All right, by itself, that wouldn't be that useful. I can now take this out of here and add another form. I'll just go ahead and delete it. And tell it I want to make a new addition to my project. And where that came up is under My Templates, and there's my blue form. Now, because there's code behind this thing, it's possible that some dangerous code could be in there, but I can trust it because I know where it came from. My project now got to have a new start point because they don't have Form 1 anymore. I'll tell it to start on the Blue Form 1. Notice it named the form Blue Form 1. So if I add another one, you'd expect it to work just like Windows does, just like Visual Studio does, and name it Blue Form 2. All right, there's that form. Now if I want to add another one to it, and again I'm going to use my blue form. You can see I have Blue Form 1, Blue Form 2. I can rename it to anything I want to. The name isn't a fixed thing. Change all the references to it, and now we have the two forms. They can be resized independently, and the buttons can be added or taken away as you need them. Alright, so now I want to be careful that we're not implying visual inheritance here. This is very important because visual inheritance is a different thing. What's going on is each one of these forms is being created from exactly that same template, so that everybody using the zip file is not changing the zip file, they're not changing the default, they're just using that as a place to get started, which can be a great idea. So let's take a look at a couple more things. Don't confuse you with what visual inheritance is. We'll take a look at what visual inheritance can do for you. I'll close this out, and I'll say here that I want to compile it. And now I'll come in and say that what I want to do here is add a new item. In this case, I'm going to use the inherited form. And it's going to say, what do you want to use, my Blue Form 1 or my Blue Form? So I'll say, okay, I'll take my Blue Form. And now I have this, that appears to be a new copy of the Blue Form. But there's a couple things different about it. Let's take a look at the control that's on there. If you notice, none of the properties of this form can be edited. That's a bit of a drawback. If I go to the events, none of the events can be edited. Which is to say that this isn't exactly going to be my most useful tool. And the reason for that, and I'll just go ahead and get rid of this form and show you the base form. The reason it does that is because under my Blue Form, the base form itself, and go into the code here, you'll see that everything about this is marked private. So if the inherited form, the base form, has everything private, you're not going to be able to do too much with it. Okay, so you understand the difference between the inherited form and using a template. Okay, so next let's take a look at making a project as a template itself. So I'll get started. We'll make a little project here. File, New Project. It's going to be a Windows application. And this time I'm going to treat it as if it's my corporate project. And we'll call it HDI Smart Client Templates Project. Okay, now like any good project, I'm going to make some customizations to my main form here, and we've been playing with the color blue, so we'll play with that a little bit. And I'm just doing this so it'll be distinctive and you'll be able to recognize this form when you see it. And you'll have to recognize this form. Okay, we like to organize a little bit because we're going to be sharing this with other users, with other developers. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a new folder. And this time I'm going to call the folder Forms. And I like to organize my projects around their functionality. Something I recommend to everybody because projects can get fairly large, especially when you're sharing them with people. And we'll create a couple more here. And this one we'll call Classes. And of course you can keep on going for reports and anything else your project might need. Now for this project I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to go add a couple of the wizard provided items. One of them I'd like to do is add a splash screen. And we're going to add an about box. And what kind of form wouldn't have a login? Alright, now naturally you'd customize these, put your own graphics on them, and tailor them for your own use. Rename them, whatever you need to do there. Okay, I'm going to go to my project. And I like to make sure a couple things happen here. One of them is, well, let's make sure my splash screen is going to show. I'm going to make this a single instance. Come up here and I don't want to do that too fast on you, so I'll make sure you've seen that. View Application Events. This gives me the opportunity to change some things according to what the application itself is doing. Let's see which events I get. Network availability has changed, shut down, startup next instance, and unhandled exceptions. Well, I like to handle unhandled exceptions, so I'm just going to tell it in this case it's going to trace. Write line. In this case, I'm going to see what the argument is, and I'm going to find out what its exception is, and just hit the message on that. And this will give me the opportunity later to put the trace into something I could collect. Of course, you wouldn't normally pass in a raw message like this where the end user can see it for fear that there's connection string information or something else sensitive in there. But we'll work on that later. What I want to show you now is it's possible for me to come up here and make an entire project that's based on a template. One thing you have to do, and this is very important, you see this root namespace? I do not want to hardwire in the root namespace. If I did that, then the new template would have a reference to this project, so I'm just going to take it out altogether and let the default feed into that. Let's see if this builds. Let me go back to my form for a second, and I'll make sure this starts in the center screen. Okay, we'll save it. That looks like a good enough name for it. And I'm going to build the application. I'll run it just to make sure it does run. Man, that's gorgeous, huh? Okay, now we have a hot application I want to save as my corporate template. Come here and say export the template. This time I'm selecting project template. That name's good enough for me. I'll just leave it that way. And I'll copy the description over. You can give it any description you like, and it's probably a good idea to. Again, this is going to come out to my exported templates smart client with the name and a zip on there. Now, I'm going to let it automatically import into Visual Studio, but again, you may not want to do that if you're sharing these across the UNC connection because other developers will be using it. But for our purposes, this will be fine. And I'll let it go ahead and show you the folder. And there we go, just like magic. There's my blue form we played with earlier, and here is my template for the project. Notice it ended up in my exported projects, and it ended up under templates, project folder, and here. And you can see that. Of course, it should have ended up under Visual Basic probably because it's the Visual Basic folder, but that's okay. It'll work for our purposes. Again, if you need to share this with other developers, you would actually choose Projects and Solutions here from my options and set the project templates for the items and for the project to a UNC name, and that way you can share them among all your friends. Alright, so what have we got here? Well, I'll save everything just in case it hasn't been. I'll close my solution, and this time I'm going to open a new project, and you see I have a template here called HDI Smart Client Templates Project. Click on it. And now let's see what it gives us. Okay, did everything else show up where it should? And you can see there's my right line message to the trace. Okay, so what you should have learned from this is it's very, very easy to create template-based solutions, whether they're form by form or entire projects. And I'd like you to give this a try because it's a guaranteed way to get consistency among your development and make it a lot easier for you from one application to the next. And this is Pat Tormey, and you've been watching How Do I Smart Client Templates in Visual Studio 2005. Thank you.